krill is such a fascinating creature, mostly because it has a lot of different nutrients that are really interesting for many species. We ourselves use it across many different species, both humans, aquaculture, many different land-based animal species, because of the variety of the nutrients it has and at the high quality. So there is phospholipid omega-3, there's astaxanthin, there is choline, there is marine proteins that has a complete amino acid profile for many species. It is small peptides that can be functional. It is nucleotides. There are so many things.
Welcome to the Pet Food Science Podcast, powered by Wisenetics, your trusted source for the cutting-edge science and insights driving the global pet food industry forward. Whether you're a nutritionist, product developer, marketer, veterinarian, or decision maker in the pet food space, this podcast is your go-to for staying competitive and informed. From emerging research and regulatory shifts to ingredient innovation and sustainability trends, we cover what matters. I'm your host, Dr. Kate Shoveler. I'm a professor of companion animal nutrition at the University of Guelph, and I have a background in comparative animal nutrition and 2 decades of experience working alongside industry partners. Let's dive into today's episode, explore krill as a fundamental and functional ingredient in dog and cat foods. Today, we have Tonje Dominguez and Knut Heggen from Aker Qrill Company. Welcome, Tonje and Knut.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, so to get started, why don't you introduce your journey to where you are today and what your role is today in the Qrill Company?
So, yes, my name was Tonje. We are based in Norway. So my background is I am an animal nutritionist from the University of Life Science in Norway. I did my master there in 2000, and after that I started in Qrill's Pet Nutrition, stayed there for 13 years in different technical roles. Then I went on to the human supplement business and worked there in R&D for 7 years. And then I came back to the animal nutrition segment again, which is the closest to my heart, here in Aker Qrill Company. And I've been working here ever since as a technical support to sales and our science department.
Fantastic, interesting journey. Knut.
Yeah, so I am not a nutritionist. I have a business degree. I'm a bachelor in economics and marketing, specialized in international sales. And actually, I've been in the pet food industry my whole life. I have 18 years for Qrill's Pet Nutrition here in Norway as a sales manager and country manager. Before I actually started here in Aker, and I met Tonje in our common time in Hills. So as soon as I could, I called her, and she started here working with me. So I'm a head of sales in the pet business for Aker Qrill Company.
Aker Qrill, responsibly managed, our krill ingredient supports both pet health and the planet. Backed by science and full traceability, it delivers proven benefits from superior omega-3, choline, and astaxanthin, making it an essential addition to any premium pet food formula. Visit krillpet.com to know more.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like your professional partnership has served you well in addition to your history. Would you mind sharing just a little bit about the Aker Qrill Company for those in the listenership that might not be familiar?
Yeah, so Aker Qrill Company is a fishing company, and the only thing we fish for is krill. So even if we're based in Norway, we actually fish on the other side of the world. We're not fishing at the North Pole, we're fishing in the South Pole for krill. and we make products from krill. There's krill in every ocean. So there's krill outside Spain, there's krill outside US, and there's krill outside Norway. But it's only in Antarctica. Actually, the krill comes together in big swarms, so you can actually commercial fish them. So we fish in the South Pole. It's quite difficult fishery. You know, we have a lot of weather, ice, and so on. So we have 3 fishing vessels, all with different skill sets, because the krill is in these big swarms can be deep in the water, and it can be close to the surface. So it's difficult skill sets for the 3 fishing boats we have, and they're all factory boats. So what we produce is actually produced on the boat. We are trawling for krill, like not traditional trawling. So trawling is when you have a huge net behind the boat, sort of filling the trawl with fish or krill, and then you take the trawl up to the boat. We don't actually do that. So we have a hose behind the net, which is actually sucking the krill inside the boat constantly. So the trawl is always close to empty. And we don't have to take pauses to take the net up, so we can continuously produce krill, fish krill without stopping until the boat is completely full of finished products. That means the packaging the customer receives is actually packed on the boat in Antarctica. And the trawl we fish in about 1.5 knot speed, so very, very slow. And we have 2 nets in front of the net. That means that if a cod, for example, swims in front of the net, it will be pushed aside by the net. And the speed is so slow, so the fish swims much faster. So we have close to 0 bycatch. And
only krill goes in the...
Only krill goes into the net, because the masks of the net in front of the trawl is so small. And with a lot of the bycatch you get from trawling is when you take the trawl out from the sea, because then seagulls and birds are trying to feed from the trawl. And our trawl is always underneath water. So it's a very efficient way of doing it. It's also limiting the bycatch. So we have several measures to do that. And as I mentioned, these are production vessels. So we take the krill on board constantly. As I said, there is a constant flow of fresh krill going straight into our factory. In the factory, we boil the krill, and then we separate the water from the meat, and then we dry the meat, and we package the krill in the bags that you will receive as a customer. There's a natural source of astaxanthin in the krill, which protects the krill itself, so there's no preservatives needed. But we actually nitrogen packaging the products on the boat, so it's completely stable.
And can I add that because we do that this way, nitrogen flushing the bags, we don't need to add additional antioxidants, for example, and other things to preserve. So it's all natural product inside that bag with a good shelf life. Absolutely.
And as the boats, we have 3 of these fishing vessels, and they fish until the boat is completely full with packaged 500 kilo bags or 25 kilo bags. And then we have a freighter coming from Montevideo, Uruguay, doing the offload where the fishery is happening, and crew changing and all that is happening with this freighter. You fill up with food and you take the products back, and that means only 1 day of stop in the fishing, and then you don't have to use the fishing boat to freight the finished product back to shore and then out again starting fishing. So it's very efficient for the fishing boats and very little downtime. But that means we spend less time in the ocean fishing, doing other stuff like freighting the products, because we have this freighter. And then the products are reaching our warehouse in Montevideo and then shipped out to all over the world. And we sell krill basically all over the world. either to the aquaculture market or to the pet food industry.
Interesting. Just a fascinating efficiency example. Really enjoyed that. Can you quantify how that efficiency and that care to ensure that you only harvest krill, how that impacts your environmental sustainability? And when we look at maybe another pillar of sustainability, now a little bit different, does it also impact the ocean fish and mammal welfare pillar as well? Would be another question to layer on to my first about efficiency and sustainability.
Yeah, so good question. So I think one of the things that makes krill one of the most sustainable marine ingredients in the world is that the biomass is so huge. So in the area of a fish, which is a really restricted area called Area 48, there are actually 62 million tons of krill. And the fishing quota is only 1%, and we fish less than 1%, so basically 620,000 tons of the 62.6 million tons. So taking a very, very small part of the biomass in the area of a fish. Other fisheries can be up to 20% of the biomass, so this is one of the biggest pillars, I will say, for sustainability. And that means actually that there's a common perception that we're taking food from the whales by fishing krill, but we only take 1% of the biomass. And there is plenty of krill left for other animals to feed on krill. And we actually have studies that saying that the whale community, the whale population is actually thriving and increasing in the area of a fish. And we have a lot of studies doing that. So we actually established something called Antarctic Responsible Krill Fisheries, which actually means that every fishing boat fishing for krill in Antarctica has to be a member of that. And it sets a lot of rules how to behave in Antarctica and how to conduct the fishery, but it also gives every boat to science 1 week a year. So scientists can apply for using the boats to do any kind of research in Antarctica with our equipment. And they can do, ice research or krill research or penguin research or whale research. So we know a lot what's going on in Antarctica and how we impact how our fishery impact Antarctica. So we have quite a good data on that we're doing as little harm as possible where we are in Antarctica doing the fisheries.
It also makes me want to go back and do a PhD in ocean biology, because you're inviting people to go and do research on your actual fishing boats. And that is just a tremendous opportunity. Very, very interesting.
There's also official veterinarian on every fishing vessels in Antarctica, just overseeing the operation.
Oh, interesting.
So there is something called CAMELAR, which is responsible for regulations and setting the quota, and CAMELAR is a council represented by 25 members. So it's 24 different countries that has ownership in Antarctica, and EU. And EU counts as one country. And they set the regulations and fishing quotas for the operations in Antarctica. I also want to say that we take sustainability very, very seriously. And just being in Antarctica means you need to be cautious of how you impact the environment and try to make as small footprint as possible. So we actually have sea drones searching for krill. So we don't have to use the bigger boats searching for krill, because you actually have to hunt for krill. You have to find it, and there's a lot of ice and weather down there. The krill moves around, so we use drones with the same sonar system as in the big boats. And with our sort of long history and experience together with AI, we can really well calculate where the krill is, so we don't spend time searching for it. So we try to be as efficient and as careful as possible operating there.
Yeah, and what a great example of, I imagine that you said AI, but that was likely a machine learning model that you used, right, to start to predict that. Really, really fascinating application as we start to think about how we use AI tools across the industry as well. So maybe on the last part of the sustainability, if you wouldn't mind comparing krill meal, krill oil to fish meal and fish oil on a sustainability basis, especially if companies are thinking about pivoting to some krill oil. I don't necessarily mean a complete replacement, but what does that comparison between the sustainability of wild caught and farmed fish versus krill?
I want to go back to what I covered in the first place. So we only fish 1% of the biggest biomass in the ocean, which is the biggest difference, I will say. And krill is not widely used or almost not used as human food at all. So we're not competing with taking, nutrition from people. We also MSC certified, which is a different, and we are rated 7 years in a row as the most sustainable reduction fishery in the world. We're actually the only A-rated company of reduction fisheries in the world, I will say. So very low catch or quota of the total biomass, not competing with the human foods. MSC certified. I think that's the biggest difference.
Great. Well, thank you for the overview on sustainability. And now let's talk a little bit about the nutritional value of krill oil and get a little bit more into that. So maybe let's just start with, why would anybody entertain incorporation of krill into the diet of really you can talk about humans as well. Of course, we want to know about what the value might be of incorporating it into dog and cat diets as well.
Yes, so we think krill is such a fascinating creature, mostly because it has a lot of different nutrients that are really interesting for many species. We ourselves use it across many different species, both humans, aquaculture, many different land-based animal species, because of the variety of the nutrients it has and at the high quality. So there is phospholipid omega-3, there is astaxanthin, there is choline, there is marine proteins that has a complete amino acid profile for many species. It is small peptides that can be functional. It is nucleotides. There are so many things in this krill. So when we provide this ingredient, it is actually one ingredient with many benefits. It's not just omega-3 or EPA, DHA. And if we are talking firstly a little bit about phospholipids, so why are we so into emphasizing the phospholipid part? And that's because the EPA and DHA in the krill is the same as EPA and DHA in other marine sources as well. but it is carried by this phospholipid. So phospholipid is the vehicle that transports EPA and DHA around the body. This phospholipid form is so easily absorbable, much easier than triglycerides in the intestine. And when the phospholipid has taken it into the body, it also goes a different pathway inside the body. So it goes quite directly to the liver, and then it is designated to the different cells. And now you have the chemical format of this phospholipid omega-3 that fits exactly into the cell membrane. So this is how the cell membrane is built up from phospholipids. And it even has this choline component added to it. More than 80% of our phospholipids has attached omega-3s, and more than 81% of the phospholipid also have this choline. So you have a chemical structure that fits exactly into all cell membranes in the whole body, where it needs to be to give the health effect for the pets.
Fantastic. Well, maybe if you wouldn't mind as well, just for the listeners who might be thinking about krill oil as an addition to something in their dog and cat food lines, the potential consumer noticeable effects of the physiology that you just discussed. So what could be different in terms of the benefit to the pet that the consumer would notice?
It is difficult to see pure health, kind of, if in the animal, unless it has a condition from before. But the phospholipid omega-3 and the choline and the astaxanthin, all three gives a lot of different health effects in the body. So for example, obese cats, we know obese cats are struggling a lot with fatty liver disease. Having a very efficient choline supply in your food, we see actually can benefit those obese cats struggling with fatty liver disease. It's not easy to see, but if you have a condition and you're at a veterinarian, this is something you can see. In general, having EPA and DHA and astaxanthin transported so effectively into the cell membrane, this is affecting the signaling molecules that the cell membrane is sending out to the body. So the more omega-3 you have in your cell membranes, the more anti-inflammatory effect would you have in your body. And we know that we are all species are struggling with some sort of inflammation, either primary as a primary driven condition, or secondary, like when we exercise hard. You create inflammation in your body. So having inflammation damping nutrients available in your cell membrane then, like EPA and DHA and astaxanthin, will reduce that inflammatory pressure. And I think for a healthy standard dog, maybe some has itchy skin or sensitive skin. I think sensitive skin is one of those specialty diets that are very popular and most selling, probably.
Mobility.
And mobility. If you have those issues, easy scratching skin or difficulties of moving freely, the omega-3 addition in the diet could actually make the owner see the difference on the skin quality, the coat quality, and fat in general, but also, like Knut added, the mobility issues that many dogs are struggling with. Cognition, we know that there are cognitive diets out there for healthy aging, but also for those that has cognition issues. And those diets that you can use there to actually see the difference in your animal, how they behave, they are usually quite rich in EPA and DHA and antioxidant. And Krill provides this in a packaged solution.
Excellent. Yes. And I think it is, from my end of things, what I notice is a lot of interest in the 6-to-3 ratio, but a poor understanding about the contribution of linoleic and alpha-linolenic acid in contrast to EPA, DHA, and arachidonic acid that tends to come from either mammals or ocean in the case of EPA and DHA. And so when we add these, we also have to remember that we need higher doses of EPA and DHA in situations where we've already seen a decline or we have already noticed the impact of inflammation. And it's becoming more and more challenging, especially with our interest in aging pets, about, to your point, we may have a potential of feeding these oils earlier to prevent, but it is so hard to tease out prevention and impact on aging, especially in animals that we try to take non-invasive research approaches to, where we generally don't look at tissue. And so people are adding this for a guarantee for later, but the science from other mammals and the science that exists in dogs and cats would suggest that there would be an advantage for a lifetime supplementation at different levels. So I just really wanted to emphasize that to our listeners, that sometimes the consumer might not see a direct application with a 5-year-old dog or cat because they're young and as an adult and still very flexible. But that doesn't mean that there wouldn't be a benefit of adding it to adult diets. And there is absolutely a benefit to adding it when there are other issues that you're trying to overcome, such that you talked about.
And I think also for the learning purpose of a puppy and a kitten, we know that DHA, especially addition of enough DHA in the brain, can affect how fast it learns. And maybe you will not notice if this went fast or a bit slower. But then I think the general dog and cat owner needs to trust the science coming out, telling them how this is of huge benefit, even though you cannot see it necessarily.
Yes. And we have the capacity to probably do larger scale studies where we can examine that. I'm really interested in service and paramilitary dogs. That would be a really great time to implement greater fish oil supplementation as an example. So maybe bringing this together for application, if you were making recommendations and talking to pet food companies about incorporating krill, how would you have this discussion? What aspects would you be talking about in terms of their adoption of krill oil into their ingredient portfolio?
Just say that the majority of what we sell is a krill meal. And all the oil is in the meal. So it's when you extract the oil from like krill oil, you actually extract it from the full fat meal, which is an expensive operation. So what we sell to the pet food industry is full fat krill meal with 30% fat. That means 3.5 grams of krill meal equals 1 gram of krill oil. And therefore you get the proteins like an addition to the phospholipid omega-3.
And actually using the meal is better than using only the oil, because when you have extracted the oil, you need to use ethanol to extract it, and you will have residues of ethanol in that krill oil extraction. Using the krill meal, you have the full fats already implemented in the meal with no additional additives in there. So it's kind of even a more pure form, and the function is exactly the same from the phospholipid in the oil and phospholipid that it is in the meal, because all the oil is in the meal, as Knut said.
Excellent. And that also means that the oil fraction of the meal will be more stable as well, correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's very important rather than it being extracted and added as an oil on the outside of the kibble, because we're talking about overall impact on kibble shelf life as well.
Yes, absolutely. And also cost, because the krill oil is much more expensive than the meal as well. So why pay more for raw material that is actually less valuable than you can have it when it is inside the meal?
Right. Absolutely. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
So let's pivot and talk a little bit about the incorporation of krill meal into pet food then, and what kind of discussions that you have around that incorporation.
Right. And then, like you just emphasized before, every cat and dog should have a basic amount of omega-3s and preferably also a good antioxidant inside the meal as a base. So we prefer any food company, we advise them that on any level for any of their brands and diets, this krill ingredient will be useful. It will benefit the cat or the dog. And we usually say it's okay to start with a 3% inclusion or 2% maybe in the US. Because they have different regulatory limits there. But when it comes to the general well-being using the krill meal, we can also more target the specialty diets with more specific amounts, and then even therapeutic diets treating various conditions. So we usually try to map out where would they like this nutrient to give the most impact in their diet range. And although it can go in any diet, depending on the concept, we can advise on the dosage that they should use of Qrill Pet in the different concepts. Is it a cognition concept? Is it a skin and coat concept? Mobility? And then we can advise dosage according to your concept so that you know you can have a health effect. Because that's what it's all about, right? We are not just about getting rid of all the krill meal. We would like it to be included so that it has actually a health effect in the cat and dog, and not just cost additional money without giving anything. It needs to be noticed, and it's supposed to bring those health effects for the cats and dogs.
Absolutely. So if our listeners are really interested in having these discussions with you and the Aker Qrill Company, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, they can send us an email or they can call us. I think all our details are on our website, Aker Qrill Company, or Krill with a Q, Krill.com.
So for the listeners, that's Krill as in Qrill. So it's the Aker Qrill Company, and Krill is in all caps for those of you that are looking for it on the web. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this interesting information about krill and the opportunity for it to be incorporated into dog and cat diets and beyond, functional treats, supplements likely as well. Really, really interesting. But I do have a couple of last questions for you.
It's time for our famous three.
So the first is, and this is maybe a question just a little bit more broadly, as a technical salesperson and as a nutritionist, what is your key reference that you use every day that you cannot live without beside your desk?
So for me, actually, I use a lot the NRC, the Nutritional Research Council booklet, because it gives me a lot of the base knowledge that I need every day on a lot of different nutrients. I also use PubMed a lot. and PubMed guides me further on to other exciting sites and Google Scholar. But those are my key work tools every day. And I have a huge map of all the reactions going on in the metabolism, of course, on my desk behind my computer, so that I always can visit those basic chemical compositions happening in the body. And then connect that to the nutritional research that I find. I think that's super useful.
I have to add for you, Tonje, if you do not have this book called Metabolism at a Glance, you should probably, that's my go-to. And you said you love biochemical pathways. That is the reference for biochemical pathway geeks.
So get that one.
Yes, you can get it on like most bookstores or Amazon usually. So it's great. So how about you, Knut? What's your go-to on your desk?
She's sitting beside me. And actually, Tonje has developed something we call the magic toolbox. It's actually a huge Excel sheet where everything is sort of recorded. There's calculators. I can just put in inclusion levels and I will get, astaxanthin levels, mixing levels, price, phospholipid levels. I will have all the science that we have done with hyperlinks in there. So it's a one go-to magic toolbox where I can look much more professional than I really am. So I'm really happy for that. And I'm sitting beside Tonje and ask a lot of questions.
That's fantastic. Well, a good team is essential to success, I think. Okay, so now I just need to know, you kind of alluded to it, but what fish or mammal eats the most krill in the wild?
So it's definitely the whales. After that, it's the penguins. And I really want to highlight that what I said earlier, we're taking just 1% of the biomass where we fish, but we also have penguin buffer zones. So where the penguins are living, we don't fish. So we have restricted that, so we're not interfering with the penguins either. So that's important to underline.
Oh, excellent. I do have to ask, because I forgot to ask when you were describing this, but were your boats, was the idea behind how you harvest, was it the whale?
Oh, I think so. Krill fishery has gone on since the 1960s. And I think it started as people discovered this huge biomass in Antarctica, looked at it as a resource, didn't really know what to do with it. And I think during the 70s, they fed cows with it. And it's not easy accessible because it's down in Antarctica, but still it was easy accessible once you were in Antarctica. And then we started to sort of think how to utilize this resource. What's the components in it? Why is it on the bottom of the food chain? And we discovered it actually contains all these vital, essential nutrients, which is important for all life, building up the value chain.
And being so pure because of the environmental pressure down there. We don't have pollutants in the same way as you find in other oceans. So it's a clean environment that helps us get a clean raw material as well.
Yeah.
Oh, fascinating.
Basically, we went to krill oil as a supplement for humans. And then we discovered all the benefits for salmon breeding, for example, and aquaculture, and all the health benefits you add when you add krill to aquaculture diets. And then we went to, if it's good for humans and it's good for aquaculture, and it should also be good for pets. And now we're on to more production animals like piglets. We also have science on horses, crocodiles, flamingos. There's a lot of species we have been sort of investigating health benefits for.
Yes, I have other questions that could easily come off of this. I mean, we mainly talked about the lipid components of krill meal, but we could definitely get into astaxanthin. We could get into chitin. There's so many things that krill meal would provide beyond the lipid fraction. But we'll have to have you back, so I will encourage that.
Because we should have had a separate session only for the astaxanthin and the marvelous things that can do throughout the whole cell membrane with so many quenching possibilities.
Absolutely. Yes. A super antioxidant when you compare it pound to pound to other of our better known antioxidants, I would say. Okay. Last question I ask everyone. Do you prefer dogs or cats is the first, and who do you think likes krill meal better?
So I guess you as well, have a soft spot mostly for dogs, but also cats. We both have both species in the house, and several of them. And who likes krill the most? So definitely dogs, because they like they don't have that palate that the cat has, so they're easier to please, even though krill does taste good. Cats, they love krill. Some of them want to get used to it though, and it should be incorporated into a complete meal, because only serving them krill as a powder, they would react to the texture, right? So a little bit different notes on both of them, but maybe dogs are a no-brainer, and cats, you need to work a little bit more.
Yeah, that's always the take-home message with dogs and cats is cats always need a little bit more time, a little bit more convincing, and your hypothesis is always wrong.
Yeah.
So they're fun. Well, with that, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for letting us come.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that concludes another episode of the Pet Food Science Podcast, presented by Wisenetics. Thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to stay updated on future episodes. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review, because your feedback is invaluable. Until next time, this is Kate Shoveler signing off from the Pet Food Science Podcast.